Hello, we are at the DIA 2019 conference, and my name is Deborah Collyar, and I'm with Patient Advocates in Research, or PAIR for short. And I'm here with Meredith Buxton, who's with the Global Coalition for Adaptive Research. We're going to call it GCAR because it's easier. And Meredith provides operational leadership for GCAR, which is a nonprofit research organization that's founded to expedite discovery and development of treatments for patients with rare and deadly diseases. It's also home of the glioblastoma GBM, right? Agile trial. It's a trial.
Master protocol.
Master protocol, okay, great, because that's what we're going to be talking about, which is an international seamless phase 2 and 3 responsive adaptive randomization platform trial. That's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful.
In glioblastoma. So I'm going to ask Meredith more about that. And before joining GCAR, Meredith worked with Berry Consultants, providing strategic guidance as the Director of Clinical Trial Strategy for master protocols and platform trials. And she's also been an assistant professor in the past with University of California, San Francisco, UCSF, and served as Executive Director of the I-SPY Trials Consortium, which was actually one of the first, I believe, innovative platform trials for locally advanced breast cancer. And that's where Meredith and I met many years ago. So we were just catching up as well. So Meredith, I wonder, first of all, since that was such a mouthful of a trial, could you tell us a little bit about the Agile trial for glioblastoma? And then we'll start to talk more about platform trials and what those are and how they can offer more benefits to patients.
Sure. So I think, though, it is helpful to just sort of take a step back and think about the drug development process, which is a long and costly process. Few winners, lots of failures, billions of dollars, many years to bring drugs to market, and that's really an unsustainable model. When you think about a disease like glioblastoma, where 95 mortality rate of 95% after 5 years. More than half succumb to the disease within 15 months, and lots of failures in that space in terms of drug development. There needed to be a new solution. And I think...
by the way, thank you for saying failures of the drugs, not the patients.
Correct. And so there's challenges within that space, challenges within drug development, and then the need to sort of overcome those challenges. One of the solutions has been to look at more innovative trial designs to try to overcome that. Master protocols and platform trials as being a type of master protocol can potentially accelerate drug development. So master protocols are really a series or a collaboration of many operational and design processes within one trial. Rather than and the hope is to create more efficiency than if you were to do single and individual trials on their own.
Right. And I know this is actually a concept that, as a patient advocate, we've been championing for decades.
Yeah, right. And there's no need to recreate the wheel every time.
Right.
And so there are master protocols that people may have heard of terms like umbrella trial or basket trial, but platform trial is one of those. And that is in a single disease area, we're looking at studying many different therapies in a perpetual manner. So drugs are coming in and out using a decision algorithm.
From different sponsors.
It can be from different sponsors, can be from the same sponsor or pharma partner, as we call them. And so, again, there was this series of sort of maybe potentially knowable failures in the GBM space. Using endpoints, imaging endpoints that may not have been, good predictors of overall response. Using historical controls versus controls within the trial, and that may have over or underestimated the effect. So a group of key opinion leaders, clinicians, advocates, scientists came together and said, we want to do something, different in this space. And taking a cue from the I-SPY efforts and looking at sort of the innovations that were created through that effort to try and build out a sort of turnkey solution for drug development, to sort of lower the bar for participation of pharmaceutical companies. So it is a phase 2/3, as you said. So that is a seamless step from a screening to a confirmatory to hopefully a new drug application in a very short amount of time. We use response adaptive randomization, so the outcome data from prior patients can update the probabilities and make some of those effective drugs more likely to be assigned to future patients.
So you're informing yourselves as the trial is going on.
Correct.
And then adapting the trial for the findings or for the evidence that's building.
Correct. Right? So in a sense, good drugs are being more likely assigned to patients and bad drugs are hopefully dropping quickly out of the trial.
Okay. Right, which benefits everyone. Certainly the patients have a better chance in a clinical trial of getting something that might actually work for them. And companies also have a faster go, no-go decision so that it doesn't cost as much money.
Absolutely. And I think it really is a patient-centric model. You know, you're giving patients the opportunity to have more access to likely, hopefully effective drugs, increased probability of being assigned those. Those poor performing drugs are hopefully dropping quickly. You're giving them a portfolio of options rather than, one trial. GBM Agile is open to both newly diagnosed and recurrent patients. So we're in a lot of institutions, there may not be options for one or the other group.
Right.
And over time, as we bring in new drugs, lots of different opportunities for patients to have potentially access to promising treatments.
Okay. So recruitment and retention are always issues with clinical trials, as we know. How have patients reacted to this type of a study?
I think, as you can speak to it as a patient advocate, but I think it is the kind of trial that patients want to see. Mm-hmm. In the design, they're more likely to get more than just standard of care. The design is 20% of patients go on standard of care, 80% on standard of care plus an investigational drug. So an opportunity to try something different when the standard of care has not been that successful in the space.
So you have a 1 to 4 basically a 1 to 4 chance of getting something new rather than the standard treatment.
Correct. Right. Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think patients, they need more options. They need we're opening, the trial is opening across the U.S. and internationally, and we're opening at a fairly conservative pace. We've got 40 sites opening in the U.S. this year. But even on day one with just our first site open, so we have opened our first site, we've enrolled our first patient as of last week, so that's kind of hot off the presses. But it's disheartening when you talk to patients and we're not able to offer them more and quicker. So I think they're really looking for new options and better options than they have. Okay. So these kinds of trials can give them those options.
Okay. So in thinking about or considering a platform trial or innovative design, which the patient communities are very supportive of. And I know the good news is the regulators are now supportive of those as well. So we're hoping that companies will start doing more of them and participating in these types of partnership approaches. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that we face getting these types of designs done?
Well, I think people think that because they seem complex, that there are different design and operational hurdles, but they face the similar ones that traditional clinical trials do. There needs to be more upfront planning, and I think, a lot of the solutions that we put forward create a lot more of an efficient process, better patient retention and education, better compliance from the sites. We're creating flexible processes, things that can evolve over time, but a lot of structure in the design. So that repetition creates mastery. So if the institutions and the study sites are able to better explain the trial, they're able to better support patients in terms of their treatment, I think that better supports patient retention, GCP compliance, data quality, so all of those things.
And I think one really important point that you made there is the planning ahead of time, because so often what I hear is from people who are trying to do the work and get more innovative design in, they're getting resistance within their own company because they have a timeline that was established kind of in the traditional way, when a lot of engagement with patient communities as well as platform trials take more planning up front, but it can really help streamline the process of conducting the trial. Is
Absolutely.
that what you found as
Absolutely.
well?
I mean, it may be a little bit more ramp up period. You may need to look at some of your processes internally if you're company that already has well-established processes and try to create some solutions around those. But you really want the design and the questions you're asking to drive process. You don't want it to be the other way around, that you don't do something because your data collection system can't, include data from multiple arms for a trial. You want to look for processes and, create processes to support it. And so the ramp up period may be a little bit longer, but ultimately what you've created is sort of a turnkey approach as you bring in new arms in the trial. You've got a group of committed investigators, you've got patients aware of the trial, you are, your process for your enrollment's at a steady state. It's, a traditional trial, you've got a ramp up period every time you start.
Right.
And in this case, once you get up and running, even if it is a little bit more time to think through prospectively how to anticipate problems or how to build solutions that are structured and efficient but flexible, you ultimately have a much, I think, more efficient and rapid mechanism for testing new drugs.
Okay, so let's change a little bit and talk about the sites. Mm-hmm. And I know with this trial it's new, but you're trying to get more sites on. But in your past experience with other platform trials, what type of response has there been from clinicians?
Well, it's interesting. While we're new and we've only opened one site, we have 40 sites that we're targeting to open by the end of the year in the US. Then we are opening in Canada, Australia, China, Europe. So we're looking for a real global solution for patients. It's interesting, we have a wait list. And I say that because there's, and we had originally planned to do about 25 to 30 sites in the US. Really wanted to focus on quality, not quantity. Really make sure that we're supporting the patients and the trial in the way that it needs to be. But there's been such a strong interest from the community to try and open something like this for their patients and be able to offer them new solutions. And again, we've tried to create processes that are simple and structured and consistent so that the sites don't feel like they're overly complex and there's some big hurdle. And so far the reviews at the sites, the ethics committees have been very positive. We haven't seen a lot of resistance to this design as being unseen or confusing or complicated.
Okay, great. So how have you worked with patient communities to help develop this and build awareness about the study itself?
So we have two important strategic partners, although we're working with the advocacy community as a whole. But GCAR is the third-party sponsor and facilitator of the effort. The real advocates in the National Brain Tumor Society is one of our key strategic partners. National Foundation for Cancer Research, another strategic partner. Work very closely with them on messaging and communicating with patients. They've done a lot of philanthropic support and fundraising for us. So we really consider ourselves the facilitator of this effort on behalf of the advocacy community.
Okay. And as far as explaining this to patients, I know sometimes people think that's a barrier as well. I have not found that, but I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we've got a couple of solutions there. We are setting up a patient information line so that there's an opportunity to talk to a neuro-oncology nurse and sort of create a little less confusion around it. While clinicaltrials.gov has the listing, I think sometimes that's not always clear to patients. We are working closely with the sites to make sure that when the patients do call the sites, that there is somebody there who can answer their questions and explain. We want patients not to delay treatment and wait for this trial. We want them to, if they are eligible, get into the sites quickly or move on and look for other options. And then we've created some processes. We're using some of the experience from previous trials. So our informed consent is a two-part consent. We don't want to overburden patients with too much information. Imagine, a 50 or 60 page informed consent with the risks of every drug that we are studying. That would be overwhelming and unfair to patients to try to make a decision in that situation when they're already feeling stressed and confused in terms of their diagnosis and their treatment options. Right. So we have a two-part consent, which we hope will break up the information and only provide patients information that they need at the time that's important to make that decision. And we're continuing to build out patient educational materials and working with our partners to figure out what are the right additional information to share with patients.
Was there patient input also in things like eligibility criteria, protocol development itself?
There's been, as part of, there was a knowledge network that came together, a series of think tanks that involved, as I said, the research community and the advocacy community. And that was from day one in building out the protocol, the design, the processes. So it's really been an integrated approach from the beginning.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I know that has been my experience before as well in helping actually build the clinical trials themselves, because we can help build trials that eliminate a lot of barriers that can traditionally be built into the study because no one's looking at it from an experiential standpoint, from the patient standpoint. So a lot of times, and of course that can help down the line with fewer amendments, and which costs money and make the trials go faster as well. So that's great to hear. Is there anything else that you would like us to know about, in particular, the Agile study or about platform trials?
I think we're at the master protocol space is probably about 10 years old, and there are several ongoing trials in both oncology and in non-oncology studies, both from industry and from third-party sponsors like ourselves. We're excited because we think that GBM Agile, although in its infancy, as I said, we've consented our first patient last week, really I think we're hoping will push the field forward. We at GCAR see ourselves as, again, a facilitator of these efforts. How can we disseminate information to other groups that are doing this? How can we support other groups that are looking in other disease areas to help to move the field forward? So, we're excited to be as transparent as possible about how things are going, and in the efforts to hope that we're all learning collectively how to be more innovative and more efficient for our patients and for the diseases that affect them.
Great. So that would be terrific to have communication networks that are talking between different diseases as well as different pharma partners and nonprofit groups.
And we're doing that already. There's a series of different collaborations. There's the Adaptive Platform Trial Coalition that's come together. The Craft Precision Medicine Group under Kathy Giusti has been bringing together some of the master protocols from My Drug to iSpy to the Precision Promise to GBM Agile, so we can share learnings as well.
Terrific.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your work and for helping patients and making the clinical trial process work better for everyone. Appreciate that. And we hope that you'll take some of these points and discussion topics into account as you're creating new clinical trials for patients. Thank you very much.